Good evening, dear listeners, and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you, wherever you're tuning in from tonight, perhaps cozied up snugly in bed, nestled in your favorite quiet corner at home, or simply unwinding in some peaceful spot as the world outside quietly fades away. I'm truly delighted that you've joined me here. Take a slow, deep breath in, and let it out gently. Feel your shoulders soften and drop. Maybe pull the blankets up a little higher and allow the day to softly slip away from you. Now, let the story begin. Hercule Poirot, The Ice Hotel, Murder, Frozen Architecture Crime, Full Mystery Audiobook, Sweden. The Ice Hotel in Jukkasjärvi was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant arches of crystalline ice, sculpted suites glowing under northern lights, every guest wrapped in furs and secrets. Then, the renowned artist, Victor Lindström, was found dead in his own ice chamber, throat slit, body arranged like one of his masterpieces, blood frozen in scarlet patterns on the snow floor. Police suspected a simple crime of passion in the cold isolation. But Hercule Poirot, invited as a guest, saw a performance. Someone in this theater of frost was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Chapter 1. The stage is set. The ice hotel at Jukkasjärvi rose from the endless Lapland snowfields like a palace carved from moonlight and frost. Late December, 1948. The translucent walls, blocks of crystal-clear ice hewn from the frozen Torne River, glowed faintly blue under the pale Arctic sun that barely lifted above the horizon. Inside the heated reception lodge, an explosion of Art Deco elegance waited, polished mahogany panels gleaming with fresh wax, velvet curtains in deep midnight blue, crystal chandeliers tinkling softly with every draft. The scent hit first, expensive Chanel perfume drifting from arriving guests, clashing with the clean bite of snow carried in on fur coats, the warm undertone of hothouse lilies arranged in tall vases, and the faint, comforting curl of wood smoke drifting from the massive stone hearths. Champagne corks had popped the night before. Their dry, celebratory echo still lingered in memory. Guests descended from horse-drawn sleighs that crunched across fresh powder. Silk evening gowns rustled beneath heavy mink and sable. Kid gloves smoothed over cold fingers. Footsteps echoed on the parquet floor of the annex as people stamped snow from boots and surrendered outer layers to attentive staff. The grandfather clock in the lounge struck the quarter hour, clear, musical chimes that danced against the soft crackle of logs in the fire. Hercule Poirot had arrived 2 days earlier, invited by the hotel's visionary owner, Ingvar Berg, who wished the great detective to witness this theater of ice reborn each winter. Poirot, wrapped in an impeccably tailored overcoat, had admired the frozen architecture with polite interest. Magnificent, he had murmured, but fragile, like truth itself. That morning, the fragile illusion shattered. Victor Lindström, the celebrated Swedish sculptor whose massive ice installations had made the hotel world-famous, had retired early to his private art suite, a spectacular chamber carved with entwined lovers and soaring swans, lit by hidden electric bulbs that made the ice pulse like living opal. When the night porter rapped politely at 8 o'clock, no answer came. The heavy ice door, fitted with a simple latch, swung inward at a touch. Lindström lay on the low ice platform that served as bed. Throat slashed in one clean, practiced stroke. Eyes wide open, frozen in an expression of mild surprise. Blood had poured across the translucent floor, then congealed into thick scarlet ribbons and delicate ruby sculptures, almost artistic in their own right, as though the victim had arranged his own final composition. The local constable arrived within the hour, breath steaming, boots leaving wet tracks on the heated marble threshold of the lodge. He examined the scene briefly, nodded sagely. Suicide, most likely, or a quarrel that turned ugly. These artistic types, passionate, unpredictable. He gestured at the knife still clutched in Lindstrom's stiff fingers. Case closed, or very nearly. But Hercule Poirot, standing quietly at the edge of the frozen chamber, saw something quite different. He tilted his egg-shaped head. His green eyes gleamed beneath the low light. He touched his magnificent mustache with careful precision. "Non, mon ami," he said softly to no one in particular. "This is no impulsive act. This is a performance, carefully rehearsed, beautifully staged. The body posed just so, the blood allowed to flow in patterns, even the knife placed with intention. Someone has directed this scene with great care." He stepped back into the warm corridor. The contrast was immediate. Chill night air nipped at exposed skin beyond the door, while inside the lodge the fire roared, sending waves of comforting heat across velvet sofas and crisp linen-covered tables. The cast was summoned to the drawing room. Helena Lindstrom entered first. The widow, tall, ash-blonde, wrapped in black silk that whispered against the cold marble floor. She carried a lace handkerchief she raised to dry eyes that remained conspicuously moisture-free. Her sandalwood cologne arrived before her, rich, heavy, almost defiant. Victor was everything, she managed, voice artfully broken. Shoulders trembled on cue. The performance of grief was technically flawless. Poirot watched without comment. "Observe this carefully," he murmured as if to an invisible companion. "The actor plays sorrow. But where are the tears? The handkerchief. It dabs, yet remains quite dry. The mascara does not run. Too perfect. Truth does not rehearse so neatly." Next came Marcus Hale, the British business partner. Rough tweed jacket over a silk shirt, hands steady, as he accepted a cup of strong continental coffee from a silver tray. Steam rose in fragrant curls. "Terrible business," he said, voice level. "I was in the bar until 2. Saw nothing." No tremor. No averted gaze. Confidence performed with quiet authority. Ingrid Voss followed. The young protégée, barely 25, sculptor in her own right. Kid gloves still on, hiding, perhaps, trembling fingers. Her eyes were genuinely red-rimmed. "He believed in me," she whispered. "He was going to help me exhibit in Paris." The grief seemed real. Yet when Elena's name was mentioned, her glance flicked away. "Ask yourself, mon ami, why does this one avoid the widow's eyes?" Lars Eriksson, the rival artist, strode in with cigar already lit. Cuban smoke curled into perfect rings toward the chandelier. "Of course we competed," he said, almost laughing. "But murder? Ridiculous." His voice boomed a fraction too loudly. Overcompensation. The mask of unconcern worn a little too tightly. Finally, Ingvar Berg, the hotel owner, crisp white linen shirt, face pale but composed. "This tragedy will destroy us," he said quietly. Victor was the heart of the hotel, helpful, concerned, almost too eager to assist the investigation. Poirot arranged 3 sugar cubes symmetrically on his saucer. He made a small, expressive gesture with his plump hands. "You watch with Poirot, no? You see how each one steps onto the stage. Some play their roles with confidence. Others stumble just a little." The fire crackled. Champagne glasses from the previous evening still stood on side tables, catching the light. Outside, ice tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. The northern lights had begun their silent dance beyond the glass, green and violet curtains moving across the sky. The drawing room smelled now of rich coffee, expensive perfume, cigar smoke, and the faint, metallic tang of fear beneath it all. Poirot drew himself up, small in stature, yet somehow filling the space. "The stage is set," he announced softly. "The actors have taken their places. Every mask is in position. But remember, mes amis, in the theater of crime, every actor eventually forgets their lines." The curtain had risen on a frozen tragedy. Chapter 2. Enter the Players. The drawing room of the Ice Hotel's heated annex became the first true stage of interrogation. Velvet sofas had been arranged in a loose semicircle facing the massive stone hearth. Flames danced behind iron screens, sending waves of comforting warmth across the room. The scent was rich and layered, strong continental coffee steaming from silver pots, the lingering sweetness of lilies in crystal vases, expensive Worth perfume drifting from silk-clad shoulders, and beneath it all, the faint, comforting bite of furniture wax on the polished mahogany side tables. Hercule Poirot sat in a high-backed chair like a director surveying his cast. He had arranged 3 sugar cubes in perfect symmetry on his saucer. His small hands rested lightly on the arms. "Each of you," he announced quietly, "will now perform a scene for Poirot, a private audience. Let us see how well the lines have been learned." Elena Lindstrom entered first, black silk gown whispering against the cold marble threshold. She moved with the practiced grace of someone who had spent years on society stages. The lace handkerchief appeared on cue, pressed to eyes that, once again, remained perfectly dry. "Victor was my entire world," she said, voice breaking at exactly the right moment. Shoulders trembled, head bowed. We had planned a quiet Christmas here, just the 2 of us. Poirot watched without blinking. "Observe, mon ami," he murmured as though to an invisible companion seated beside him. "This actress plays grief with technical precision. The sigh comes on the 3rd sentence. The handkerchief rises on the 4th. But notice, the fabric stays quite white. No moisture, no smudge of mascara. Truth stumbles, you see. Lies flow smooth." She left the room trailing sandalwood cologne like a signature curtain call. Marcus Hale followed. Rough tweed over a crisp shirt. He accepted a cup of hot coffee with steady hands. Steam rose in fragrant spirals between them. "I was in the ice bar until well after midnight," he stated. "Several witnesses can confirm it. Then straight to my suite. I heard nothing unusual." His voice remained level, his gaze direct. "Confidence," Poirot noted softly. "Very well performed. Yet observe how the fingers curl just a fraction too tightly around the cup. Not enough to spill, just enough to betray tension. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful none, will notice these small tells." Ingrid Voss came next. Young, still wearing kid gloves that she refused to remove. Her eyes were genuinely red-rimmed, moisture glistened at the corners. "He was my mentor," she whispered. "He saw something in my work no one else did. He promised Paris, an exhibition." The voice cracked naturally. A single tear escaped. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head. "Here the performance feels different. Genuine sorrow for the lost future. Yet when I mention the name Elena, her gaze drops to the carpet. Ask yourself, why does this young woman avoid the widow's eyes? What secret line does she fear to speak?" Lars Ericsson strode in without knocking. Cigar already lit. Thick Cuban smoke curled toward the tinkling chandelier in perfect, deliberate rings, Of course we were rivals, he said, almost laughing. Victor's ice swans got all the attention. Mine were better, more daring. But murder? Absurd. The laugh came a fraction too loud, the cigar hand too steady. Bravo, Poirot said under his breath. But the performance, it is overdone. Too much bravado. Genuine innocence does not need to proclaim itself so vigorously. Finally, Ingvar Berg, the hotel's owner. Crisp linen shirt, pale face composed into an expression of deep concern. "This will ruin us," he said quietly. Victor was more than an artist. He was the soul of the ice hotel. Every winter we rebuilt together. I helped him select the best blocks from the river. Helpful, cooperative, almost eager. Poirot made a small, expressive gesture with his plump hands. Too helpful, perhaps. The man who protests his innocence by offering every detail often rehearses the script longest. As each interview concluded, small contradictions began to surface like missed cues in a dress rehearsal. Elena claimed Victor had always hated the cold, yet he chose to sleep in the unheated ice suite rather than the warm annex. Marcus insisted he never left the bar, but one of the waiters later remembered serving him a drink on the terrace at 1:30. Well, after he said he had retired. Ingrid spoke of a promised future in Paris, but no letters or contracts could be found among Victor's papers. Lars boasted of working late on his own ice piece, yet fresh chisel marks on his sculpture showed signs of violent, angry hacking, not calm creation. Ingvar Berg offered to provide the full guest list and security logs. Yet when asked for the night porter's exact movements, his memory became suddenly vague. Poirot rose at last. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. His green eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction. "The players have entered the stage," he said softly. "Each has spoken their opening lines, some with polish, some with cracks already showing. But remember, mes amis, truth does not need rehearsal. Lies always do." Outside the tall windows, the northern lights shifted in slow, silent curtains of green and violet. Inside, the fire crackled. A distant champagne cork popped in the bar. Someone trying to drown nerves in bubbles. The scent of coffee cooled on abandoned saucers. Leather from fur coats left draped over chairs gave off a faint, animal warmth. The grandfather clock chimed the half-hour. Musical, unhurried. Poirot turned toward the frozen corridor that led back to the crime scene. "The tension rises," he murmured. "Someone will forget their lines soon. And when they do, the mask slips. Every actor had taken their mark. But who played truth and who played lies?" Chapter 3. The First Act. The investigation moved deeper into the frozen heart of the hotel. Hercule Poirot walked the ice corridors alone at first, his polished shoes crunching softly on the thin layer of frost that dusted the translucent floor. Breath clouded in small white puffs before him. The cold bit at exposed skin, yet the distant warmth of the lodge hearths still reached faintly through open doorways, contrasting fire crackle with the eerie silence of ice. The scent changed here. No more lilies or perfume, only the clean, almost metallic smell of frozen water, mingled with traces of wood smoke, drifting from outdoor braziers, and the faint leather aroma clinging to his own overcoat. He paused outside Victor Lindström's art suite. The crime scene had been cordoned with simple silk rope, elegant even in tragedy. Inside, the frozen swan still arched gracefully toward the domed ceiling, but the central figure, the artist himself, had been removed to the warm mortuary annex. Only the dark ruby stain remained frozen in artistic swirls across the ice bed. Poirot stepped inside briefly. He touched nothing, merely observed. "The staging is deliberate," he murmured. "The knife placed just so in the right hand, the head turned toward the largest swan, as though admiring his own last work. This was not rage. This was composition." Back in the heated drawing room, the first real crack appeared. Ingrid Voss requested a private word. She sat on the edge of a velvet sofa, kid gloves finally removed, revealing small, her sculptor's hands marked with old chisel scars. Her eyes were still red, but the tears now flowed freely, unrehearsed. "I must tell you something," she whispered. "Victor and I, we were lovers, for almost a year. He promised to leave Elena after the new year. He said my work deserved Paris, deserved the world. He was going to fund it all." Her voice trembled naturally. No theatrical pauses. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head. His green eyes gleamed. So, the first revelation, a mask, begins to slip. The director method. Performance observed. Ingrid weeps, yes. The shoulders shake. The voice cracks at exactly the moment's emotion would demand. Hands clutch each other in genuine distress. The Talbot observe. The tears fall only when she speaks of love, of Paris, of the future stolen. When the name Elena is mentioned, her expression hardens for one fleeting second. The jaw tightens. The eyes narrow. Grief for the man, yes, but resentment toward the wife, very much alive. The psychology. I am reminded of the Cavendish affair in '36. A young woman performed perfect devotion to her elderly husband. She rehearsed every sigh before the mirror, practiced the exact quiver of the lip, the timely dab of the handkerchief. She fooled the household. She almost fooled me, Hercule Poirot, for one brief moment. But she made one fatal error. After the announcement of his death, she reached for her teacup with perfect steadiness. A truly shocked woman spills. A truly grieving one trembles. The body knows the truth even when the face has learned its lines perfectly. In that case, the little gray cells understood. Her performance masked relief, not sorrow. She had poisoned him slowly, lovingly, for years. Here, too, Ingrid's sorrow is selective. She mourns the lost lover and the lost opportunity. But the wife? Toward her there is no grief, only calculation. The truth, therefore, this young woman knew more than mere affection. Her role shifts now from innocent protégé to suspect with motive. You see it now, no? The theater begins to crumble at the edges. Ingrid left the room quietly, head bowed. Poirot remained seated, arranging the sugar cubes on his saucer once more. 3 perfect pyramids. He spoke softly, as though addressing an audience beyond the walls. "Watch this performance carefully, mes amis. Is it truth or theater? The tears are real, the hands tremble, yet the heart divides its grief unevenly. Ask yourself, if you were hiding a dangerous secret, how would you perform innocence? Would you cry too much, or just enough?" The afternoon light faded quickly. Beyond the tall windows, the northern lights began their slow dance, violet and emerald curtains shifting across the black sky. Inside, the grandfather clock chimed 4 with delicate, crystalline notes. A servant passed with a tray of fresh coffee. The rich aroma briefly overpowered the wood smoke. Someone in the next room laughed, too loudly, too suddenly. A champagne cork popped in the bar. Nerves sought solace in bubbles. Poirot rose. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve with precision. "The first act has concluded," he said to the empty room. Some masks have cracked, others tremble on the verge. But the spotlight of truth moves slowly. It will find the one who forgets their lines soon enough. Outside, ice tapped insistently against the glass, like impatient fingers waiting for the next cue. The fire crackled louder, as though the room itself sensed the rising tension. The first mask cracked. More would follow. Chapter 4. Rehearsed lines. The pressure increased as the short Arctic day slipped into long night. Hercule Poirot moved the interrogations to the ice bar, a glittering chamber carved entirely from translucent blocks, lit by soft electric bulbs hidden within the walls. The effect was magical. Pale blue light shimmering through ice like underwater moonlight. Yet the temperature hovered just above freezing, enough to keep champagne perfectly chilled without frostbite. Guests huddled in furs over small braziers that gave off faint wood smoke and welcome heat. Crystal glasses clinked nervously. Someone had ordered a round of dry champagne. The corks popped one after another with sharp, brittle sounds that echoed off the frozen arches. The scent of fine wine mingled with bitter medicine. Elena Lindstrom's tonic for nerves, she claimed, and the ever-present trace of Cuban cigar smoke from Lars Ericsson's perpetual cigar. Poirot sat at the center table like a director calling for a run-through. "Alibis are scripts," he announced quietly. "Let us test how well they hold under spotlight." He began with Marcus Hale. The financier arrived still in tweed, but the jacket now hung open, silk shirt slightly damp at the collar despite the cold. "You stated you remained in this very bar until after midnight," Poirot said. "Yet the waiter, young Sven, recalls serving you a single malt on the outdoor terrace at 1:30, alone, in the dark." Marcus set his glass down with deliberate care. "A phone call. Urgent business from London. I stepped outside for privacy." "Privacy," Poirot repeated softly. "In -20 degrees? With the northern lights as your only witness?" Marcus's fingers tightened around the stem of his champagne flute. The knuckles whitened. "Rehearsed lines?" Poirot murmured to the empty air beside him. "But the delivery falters. Truth requires no footnotes." Next, Lars Ericsson. He leaned against the ice bar, cigar glowing. "I told you, I worked late on my own piece. The Northern Fury, chiseled until dawn." Poirot produced a small photograph taken that morning. Lars's sculpture, a jagged, abstract form. Fresh, angry gouges marred one side. Hasty, violent strikes rather than the careful artistry he claimed. "These marks," Poirot said, "speak of rage, not creation. A man truly sculpting does not hack in fury." Lars exhaled smoke in a long, controlled stream. "Frustration, artistic temperament, nothing more." "Frustration," Poirot echoed. "Yet you laugh too easily when murder is mentioned." The mask of unconcern slips when challenged. Elena Lindstrom entered then. Black silk replaced by a heavy cashmere shawl over a simple wool dress. She carried the same lace handkerchief, twisting it now instead of dabbing. "You accuse me of what?" she demanded. Voice higher than before. "Of knowing more than a grieving widow should," Poirot replied gently. "Your husband feared cold, you said? Yet he chose the ice suite. You arranged fresh roses for him that evening. Hothouse blooms, impossible in winter. Why pamper a man you claim hated frost?" Elena's lips pressed thin. A gesture. "Love, Poirot said, does not rehearse its gestures so perfectly. You described every detail of your last conversation, word for word. Too many words, too exact. Genuine memory stumbles. Lies arrive polished. Ingrid Voss was called last. She sat quietly, ungloved hands folded in her lap. The earlier confession of the affair still hung between them. Your love was real, Poirot acknowledged. But was your grief complete? Ingrid looked up, eyes clear now. I mourned what we could have been. Not everything. Poirot nodded once. Honesty at last. A line spoken without rehearsal. Small performances began to unravel in the flickering light. Marcus excused himself abruptly, claiming headache, yet returned minutes later with eyes too bright, breath too quick. Lars stubbed out his cigar with unnecessary force, ash scattering across the ice bar like black snow. Helena rose to leave, then sat again, shawl slipping from one shoulder. Her hands trembled visibly now, no longer hidden by gloves or handkerchief. Ingveberg hovered at the doorway, offering more champagne, more coffee, more assistance. Each offer met with Poirot's polite refusal. The bar grew quieter. The braziers hissed softly. Ice creaked overhead as the structure settled in the night cold. A distant piano played something slow and mournful from the main lounge. Chopin, perhaps, the notes drifting like smoke. Poirot rose at last. He adjusted his mustache with precision. His small hands made an expressive gesture toward the frozen walls. Rehearsed lines begin to falter, he said softly. The script weakens under scrutiny. One by one, the actors forget their cues. The mask strains. Soon, very soon, it will tear. He turned toward the corridor, leading back to the warm annex. The northern lights pulsed beyond the ice windows, vivid green and violet, silent witnesses to the unraveling drama. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how confidence crumbles, how grief turns to panic, how bravado becomes bluster. The spotlight narrows. Someone will break character before dawn. Rehearsed lines faltered. The script was failing. Chapter 5. The mask slips. The northern lights burned brighter that night, casting shifting curtains of emerald and violet through the translucent dome of the main ice hall. It was the largest space in the hotel, a vast, open chamber carved to resemble a frozen cathedral, with soaring ice columns and a ceiling so thin in places that the aurora seemed to dance directly overhead. The hall had been designed for grand receptions. Tonight, it served a darker purpose. Hercule Poirot had summoned only 4: Elena Lindström, Ingrid Voss, Marcus Hale, and Lars Eriksson. Ingveberg stood discreetly at the far edge, near one of the small braziers that hissed with wood smoke and gave off faint circles of warmth in the otherwise bitter cold. The air smelled of melting ice, clean and faintly sweet, mixed with the sharp bite of champagne that had been poured earlier but left untouched. Crystal flutes stood abandoned on a low ice table, catching flickers of auroral light. Someone's expensive sandalwood cologne lingered stubbornly. Beneath it all, the metallic trace of fear. Poirot stood at the center beneath the highest point of the dome, small in stature, yet the spotlight of the moment made him seem to fill the space. He wore no overcoat. His dark suit was immaculate, the white shirt crisp against the pale blue glow. He made a slow, deliberate gesture with his small, plump hands, as though drawing an invisible curtain wider. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began quietly, voice carrying clearly in the frozen acoustics. "We have reached the moment when performances can no longer be sustained. The stage is too brightly lit, the audience too attentive. Tonight, one of you will no longer be able to remember your lines." He turned first to Ingrid Voss. She stood near an ice column, arms wrapped tightly around herself despite the heavy fur stole. Her face was pale, but her eyes clear. No more theatrical tears. "You loved him," Poirot said gently, truly, passionately. "You believed his promises of Paris, of a shared future. When he died, part of you died too. Your grief was never rehearsed. It was real." Ingrid gave a small, jerky nod. A single tear escaped, quiet, unperformed. Poirot inclined his head. "You may step aside now. Your role in this tragedy is that of the innocent who loved too much, not the one who killed." Ingrid exhaled, a soft, trembling sound, and moved to the edge of the circle, closer to the warmth of the brazier. Poirot's gaze shifted to Lars Ericsson. The rival artist still held his cigar, though it had gone out. Smoke no longer curled. Only ash trembled at the tip. "You hated Victor," Poirot continued. "His success burned you. His swans received the praise your jagged forms never did. You dreamed of replacing him. Yet hate, when it kills, leaves marks, violent, uncontrolled. Your sculpture bore those marks tonight. Anger, not calculation." Lars opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time, the booming laugh did not come. "You are guilty of envy," Poirot said. "Not murder. Stand aside." Lars stubbed the dead cigar against the ice floor. The small scraping sound echoed. He stepped back, shoulders sagging. Marcus Hale remained. He stood straighter than before, chin lifted, but his hands, usually so steady, now clasped and unclasped at his sides. Tweed jacket open, silk shirt clinging slightly with nervous sweat despite the cold. "You financed this dream," Poirot said. "The ice hotel, Victor's visions, but dreams cost money. And Victor discovered something unpleasant in your accounts, small embezzlements, creative bookkeeping. He threatened exposure, blackmail, in polite terms." Marcus's jaw worked. "I never laid a hand on him." "No," Poirot agreed softly. "You did not wield the knife. But you knew who did. You stayed silent. Complicity by omission. That is enough guilt for one man. Step back." Marcus hesitated, then obeyed. His footsteps crunched on the thin frost layer. He joined the others at the perimeter, face gray. Only Elena Lindstrom remained in the center of the hall. She stood perfectly still. Black cashmere shawl draped like a cloak. Lace handkerchief clutched so tightly the knuckles showed white. Her ash-blonde hair caught violet light from above. It made her look almost spectral. Poirot drew himself up, still small, yet commanding. "And now we come to you, madame." Elena lifted her chin. "You think I killed my husband?" "I do not think, madame. I know." He began to pace a slow circle around her, measured footsteps echoing softly. "The director method. Performance observed. You wept when the body was discovered. Shoulders shook. Voice broke at precisely the right syllables. The handkerchief rose and fell in perfect rhythm. Later, in private, you sobbed again, more dramatically. Mascara allowed to run at last. A magnificent show of delayed grief. The Talbot observed the timeline, madame. When the porter first announced the death, your eyes were dry. Completely dry. No redness, no swelling. The performance began only after you had time to prepare. Genuine shock does not wait for its cue. Genuine grief arrives instantly, messy, uncontrolled. Yours was staged. Elena's lips parted. No sound came. Poirot continued, voice soft yet relentless. You arranged the hothouse roses in his ice suite, knowing he hated cold, yet choosing the coldest place for him to die. You described your last conversation in exhaustive detail, every word, every pause. Too many words. Memory does not record dialogue like a script. Only rehearsal does. He stopped directly in front of her. And the knife, madame. A sculpting tool from your own private kit. The blade you used for fine detail work on ice. Victor's blood still clings to the handle in microscopic traces. But more important than physical evidence is the psychology. Elena's breathing quickened. Shallow, rapid. The psychology. I recall the Lee case of 1939. A wife who performed perfect indifference while slowly poisoning her husband over months. She smiled at dinner parties. She laughed at his jokes. When he finally died, she arranged herself in an attitude of devastated shock, practiced for weeks in front of mirrors. Yet when the doctor announced the time of death, she asked the wrong question. Not how did it happen, but was it quick? A truly grieving wife does not calculate timing. She collapses. The body betrays what the mind rehearses. In that affair, the little gray cells saw the delay in sorrow as the clearest confession. Here, madame, your delay is even more telling. You knew of the death before the porter knocked. You waited in your warm room, composing your face, choosing your first dry-eyed line. Only later, when the audience had gathered, did you allow the tears. Elena's shawl slipped from one shoulder. She did not move to adjust it. Poirot made one final gesture, small hands opening as though unveiling a truth. You discovered the affair with Ingrid. You learned of Victor's plan to rewrite the will, leaving the Paris Gallery fund to her, not you. Greed performed as love, resentment performed as devotion, hate performed as loyalty. But the mask, madame, the mask has grown too heavy. A sound escaped Elena then, not a sob, but something rawer, a choked gasp. Her knees buckled slightly. She caught herself on the edge of the ice table. The untouched champagne flutes trembled. One tipped and shattered on the frozen floor, sharp, crystalline crash echoing like breaking glass in a dream. Tears came now, real ones, streaming unchecked. Mascara ran in black rivulets down pale cheeks. Shoulders heaved, not artfully, but convulsively. I couldn't lose everything, she whispered. He was going to take it all, the money, the name, the future. I only wanted to keep what was mine. The confession hung in the frozen air. Poirot stepped back one pace. His green eyes gleamed, not with triumph, but with something closer to sorrow. The mask has fallen, he said quietly. Beneath it, the true face at last. The aurora pulsed once more overhead, vivid, indifferent. The braziers hissed. Wood smoke curled upward in slow spirals. Somewhere in the distance, the grandfather clock chimed the hour, clear, unhurried notes that seemed to mark the end of one act and the beginning of judgment. Outside the ice walls, wind rose, low moan against the frozen structure. Inside, silence fell, heavy, final. The mask had fallen. The true face emerged. Chapter 6. Behind the Curtain. The main ice hall stood empty now, its auroral glow dimmed as the northern lights faded toward dawn. Hercule Poirot had requested the staff clear the chamber completely. No braziers, no champagne flutes, no lingering guests. Only the frozen architecture remained. Soaring columns, translucent walls etched with faint chisel marks, and the vast dome above showing patches of starry black sky. The cold was sharper without human warmth. Breath hung in visible clouds, and every footstep produced a soft, crystalline crunch on the frost-dusted floor. Poirot walked slowly along the perimeter, small hands clasped behind his back. He paused at the spot where Elena Lindstrom had finally broken. A single shard from the shattered champagne flute still glittered there, tiny, accusing. "The performance is over," he murmured to the silence, but the scenery still hides secrets. Let us pull back the curtain. He moved to the private suites corridor, a narrower passage of ice blocks fitted so precisely that seams were almost invisible. Victor Lindstrom's art suite had been sealed since the discovery, but Poirot carried the heavy iron key provided by Ingvar Berg. The latch clicked softly. The door swung inward on silent hinges. Inside, the frozen swans still arched toward the ceiling. The ice bed bore the dark, frozen stain of blood, now crusted and dull. Poirot did not approach the bed. Instead, he knelt beside a low ice shelf carved into the wall, a decorative niche meant for personal items. With careful fingers, he probed the seam where shelf met wall, a small, hidden crevice, barely noticeable unless one knew to look. From it, he withdrew a thin packet of letters bound with a silk ribbon. The paper was fine vellum, edges slightly curled from cold. He carried them to the heated annex drawing room. Fire crackled once more. Velvet curtains drawn against the dying night. A strong continental coffee steamed in porcelain cups. The scent of furniture wax and hothouse roses returned, comforting, ordinary. Poirot spread the letters on the mahogany table under the soft glow of the crystal chandelier. The first was from Victor to Ingrid Voss, passionate, detailed promises of Paris galleries, shared studios, a life remade, dated only 3 weeks earlier. The second, from Victor to his solicitor in Stockholm, instructions to amend the will, diverting a substantial trust fund from Elena to my protégé and future partner, Ingrid Voss. The third, a carbon copy of a letter Victor had sent to Marcus Hale, polite but firm demand for repayment of certain irregularities in hotel accounts or exposure would follow. Poirot touched his magnificent mustache thoughtfully. Connections, he said softly. Oh, hidden threads behind the curtain. He summoned the remaining players one by one, not for accusation now, but revelation. Marcus Hale entered first. Face drawn, tweed jacket rumpled. He saw the letters immediately. You knew, Poirot said quietly. Victor was about to ruin you financially. Yet you said nothing. Why? Marcus exhaled. I thought. If he died suddenly, the audit would stop. I never imagined Elena would... Complicity, Poirot finished. You watched. You waited. Ingrid Voss came next. She stared at her own letter, eyes wide. I didn't know about the will, she whispered. He never told me the full extent. Yet you hoped, Poirot observed. Hope can be motive enough for some, but not for murder. Your hands are clean of blood. Lars Eriksson arrived last. No cigar this time. Hands thrust deep in pockets. I hated him, he admitted, but I never touched his suite. I was carving my own piece badly, angrily. That's all. Poirot nodded once. Envy performs loudly. Murder performs quietly. Ingvar Berg lingered at the doorway. The hotel, he said hoarsely. It was built on his vision. Without him. Without truth, Poirot corrected gently. Nothing endures. Reflection. Behind every curtain in this frozen theater lies a secret. Behind every secret a motive waiting to be exposed. Humans conceal because exposure dismantles the roles we have so carefully constructed. Devoted wife, loyal partner, promising protégé, visionary host. Society applauds the performance, grief worn elegantly, ambition masked as friendship, love dressed as duty. Yet secrets do not stay frozen forever. Warmth arrives, confrontation, evidence, conscience, and the ice melts. In the Black Lock affair of 1941, letters hidden in a fireplace told the same story. A hidden, kinship-fueling murder, a will altered in shadows, a fortune protected by silence. The killer performed innocence so convincingly that even the household believed her tears. But one small letter, slipped behind bricks, betrayed everything. The body language gave the rest away. The averted glance when family was mentioned, the too quick offer to help search the ashes. Here, too, letters preserved in ice speak louder than sobs. Motive hides backstage because daylight destroys illusion. Greed performs as grief. Resentment as loyalty. Fear as helpfulness. Yet the psychology remains constant. What people reveal when they think no one watches. The hurried hand to the pocket, the clenched fist behind the back, the fleeting glance toward the hidden crevice. Guilt does not sleep. It whispers in small gestures. The careful observer hears it. And you, mon ami, are becoming that observer. You notice now how the mask never quite fits perfectly. A seam shows, a thread pulls. Eventually, the entire costume unravels. For in the theater of crime, no curtain hides motive forever. Truth always finds the light. Poirot gathered the letters carefully, retying the silk ribbon. He rose and walked to the tall window. Beyond the glass, the first pale streak of Arctic dawn touched the snow horizon. Ice crystals on the pane sparkled like scattered diamonds. The fire popped softly. Coffee cooled in forgotten cups. Somewhere in the distance, a sleigh bell chimed, morning staff arriving from Corunna. The backstage had been revealed. The hidden connections lay exposed under electric light and auroral memory. Behind every curtain, a secret. Every secret, a motive. Chapter 7, the final act. The grand ice hall had been transformed once more. All traces of the earlier confrontation were gone. Shattered glass swept away, braziers removed, champagne flutes cleared. Only the vast, translucent dome remained, now lit by soft electric lanterns placed at regular intervals along the ice columns. The northern lights had retreated. In their place, the pale, Arctic dawn filtered through the ceiling in thin, silver shafts. The hall felt like a theater after the audience has left, silent, expectant, waiting for the curtain call. Hercule Poirot had summoned every member of the cast. They stood in a loose circle beneath the dome. Helena Lindström, Marcus Hale, Ingrid Voss, Lars Eriksson, and Ingvar Berg. No chairs, no comforts. Only the cold bite of frost underfoot and the faint, clean scent of melting ice mingling with the wood smoke that still clung to their furs from the annex hearth. Footsteps crunched softly as they shifted weight. The grandfather clock in the distant lounge chimed 7, clear, unhurried notes that echoed through the frozen corridors like a final warning. Poirot stood at the exact center, small, immaculate, hands clasped behind his back. His green eyes moved slowly from face to face, missing nothing. He spoke quietly at first, voice carrying with perfect clarity in the acoustics of ice. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, "you have each performed for Hercule Poirot. Some with great skill, some with desperation, some with fragments of truth shining through the cracks. But the theater of crime has rules. Every actor must eventually face the spotlight. Tonight, the spotlight falls." He turned first to Ingrid Voss. "You played the innocent protégé, the grieving lover. Your tears were genuine, your heartbreak authentic. You loved Victor Lindström with the passion of youth. You believed his promises. You are not the murderer. Step aside." Ingrid exhaled, a small, trembling breath, and moved one pace back. Relief softened her features for the first time. Next, Lars Eriksson. You performed the angry rival loudly, bravado masking envy. Your chisel struck your own ice in fury, not his flesh. Hate you felt, yes, Murder you did not commit. Stand back." Lars gave a short, bitter nod. No laugh this time. He stepped away, shoulders dropping. Marcus Hale. You played the loyal business partner, calm, helpful, steady hands on every glass of coffee. But loyalty does not hide embezzlement. Loyalty does not remain silent when blackmail letters arrive. You knew of the danger. You waited for someone else to act. Complicity is guilt enough. Move aside. Marcus's jaw tightened. He stepped back without protest, face ashen. Ingvar Berg, you performed the visionary host, concerned, cooperative, offering every assistance. Yet the hotel's survival depended on Victor's fame and his silence about certain financial arrangements. You watched, you hoped, but hope is not innocence. You are not the hand that held the knife. Step back. Berg bowed his head slightly. He moved to join the others. Only Helena Lindström remained in the center of the circle. She stood rigid, black cashmere shawl clutched like armor, ash-blonde hair catching the silver dawn light. Her eyes, once dry, once artfully tearful, now held something raw and final. Poirot drew himself up to his full, modest height. And so we come to our leading performer. He began to walk a slow circle around her, measured footsteps crunching frost. Madame, you played the grieving widow. Magnifique. The dry eyes at first discovery. Perfect restraint. The delayed tears when the audience gathered. Perfect timing. The handkerchief dabbed with precision. The voice breaking on cue. You described your last conversation in exhaustive, rehearsed detail. You arranged hothouse roses in an ice suite you knew he hated. You chose the coldest place for warmth to die. Helena's lips parted. No sound. Poirot continued, voice soft yet inexorable. The knife came from your own sculpting kit. The fine blade you used for delicate ice work. Victor's blood still bears your fingerprints, metaphorical and literal. But more damning than any blade is the psychology. He stopped directly in front of her. You learned of the affair. You read the letter to the solicitor. You saw the new will drafted in Stockholm. The fortune, the gallery fund, the future, was slipping to Ingrid. Greed performed as love. Resentment performed as devotion. Hate performed as loyalty. But one small moment betrayed you. He made a gentle, expressive gesture with his small hands. When the porter knocked and announced the death, your first reaction should have been collapse, shock. Genuine grief arrives without rehearsal, messy, immediate. Instead, you waited. You composed your face. You chose dry eyes for the first scene. Only later, when others watched, did you allow the performance of sorrow. That delay, Madame, was your confession. A grieving wife does not pause to rehearse tears. She weeps at once. Elena's shawl slipped from her shoulders. She made no move to retrieve it. Her breathing came in shallow, audible gasps. Poirot's voice dropped lower, almost kind. You entered the suite after he slept. You took the sculpting knife, one clean stroke. Then you arranged the body, head turned toward his favorite swan, blood allowed to flow in artistic patterns. A final composition. Your husband's own style turned against him. The performance was flawless, until the curtain rose on truth. A single, choked sound escaped her. I couldn't let him destroy everything, the money, the name, my life. Tears came now, real, unstoppable. Shoulders convulsed. She sank slowly to her knees on the frost-covered floor. Poirot stepped back one pace. His green eyes gleamed, not with satisfaction, but with the quiet sorrow of a director who has seen too many tragedies. The performance is over. he said softly. The curtain falls. The truth takes her bow. Silence filled the hall. Only the faint creak of settling ice and the distant chime of the clock marked time. Dawn light strengthened, pale gold now, touching the frozen swans overhead. The cast stood motionless, masks removed, roles ended, the final act concluded. Only truth survived the curtain call. Chapter 8. Curtain Call. The grand ice hall emptied slowly, like a theater after the final bow. Dawn had fully broken over Jukkasjärvi. Pale golden light filtered through the thinning dome, turning the frozen swans overhead from ghostly blue to soft amber. The cold still bit, but the magic of the aurora had faded, leaving only reality behind. Footsteps echoed more loudly now, crisp, purposeful, as the local constable and 2 officers from Kiruna entered through the heavy outer doors. Their boots tracked faint snow across the frost floor. The scent of pine resin from their wool coats mingled briefly with the lingering, clean smell of melting ice. Elena Lindström remained kneeling where she had fallen. Her black cashmere shawl lay crumpled beside her like a discarded costume. Mascara tracks had dried on her cheeks in dark streaks. No more tears came. When the constable approached, polite, almost hesitant, she rose without assistance. Hands steady now, face blank. The performance of grief, of shock, of innocence, all stripped away. What remained was resignation, quiet and absolute. "You are under arrest for the murder of Victor Lindström," the constable said, a voice low and formal. He read the charge in Swedish first, then repeated it in careful English for the others. Handcuffs clicked softly, cold metal against warmer skin. Elena did not resist. She allowed herself to be led toward the corridor without a word, without a glance back at the frozen stage where her husband had died. The others watched in silence. Ingrid Voss stood closest to the exit, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her young face showed exhaustion more than anything else, relief shadowed by sorrow. She had loved Victor. She had believed in a future that would never come. Now the illusion was gone. She turned away as Elena passed, unable to meet the widow's eyes. A single, quiet sob escaped her. Genuine, small, final. Marcus Hale leaned against an ice column, tweed jacket open, silk shirt creased from a night without sleep. His steady hands trembled now, not from cold, but from the weight of what had been exposed. Complicity, silence, the small embezzlements that had seemed clever in London now looked petty and damning in this frozen light. He met no one's gaze. When the constable asked if he would make a statement later, Marcus only nodded once. His role as loyal partner had ended. What remained was a man facing ruin, and perhaps prison for aiding, however passively, in the cover-up. Lars Eriksson lit a fresh cigar with shaking fingers. The match flared briefly, illuminating the bitter lines around his mouth. Smoke curled upward in slow spirals, disappearing into the dome. He had hated Victor, envied him, competed with him, but he had not killed. The knowledge brought no joy, only a hollow victory. He exhaled a long plume and muttered something in Swedish too low to catch. Then he walked out without another word, boots crunching frost like breaking glass. Ingvar Berg lingered longest. The hotel owner stood near the doorway, crisp linen shirt now wrinkled, face pale beneath the dawn glow. The ice hotel had been his dream, rebuilt each winter, a living sculpture of ambition and art. Victor's murder threatened everything. Bookings would cancel, press would descend. the fragile magic would shatter. Yet Berg's expression held something almost like relief. The secret financial arrangements, the quiet pressure he had placed on Victor to keep creating, to keep drawing crowds, no longer needed to hide. "I will cooperate fully," he said quietly to the constable. "Whatever is needed." His helpfulness was no longer a performance. It was necessity. Poirot remained at the center of the hall until the last officer had gone. He touched his magnificent mustache thoughtfully, then smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. His green eyes surveyed the empty space. The ice bed with its dark stain, the scattered frost where Elena had knelt, the faint shimmer where champagne had shattered. No applause followed this performance. Only the soft creak of settling ice, the distant chime of the grandfather clock marking 8 o'clock, and the low murmur of voices in the corridor as Elena was led toward the waiting sleigh. Outside, the world had woken. Sleigh bells jingled faintly as morning staff arrived from Kiruna Station. Fresh coffee would soon brew in the annex. Hothouse roses would be rearranged in crystal vases, velvet curtains drawn back to let in the pale sun. The hotel would try to continue, reborn each winter as always, but this season carried a scar no melting ice could erase. In the warm drawing room later, Poirot accepted a final cup of strong continental coffee. Steam rose in fragrant curls. He arranged 3 sugar cubes symmetrically on the saucer and stirred slowly. The others had dispersed. Ingrid to pack her few belongings, Marcus to telephone his solicitor in London, Lars to his own suite to stare at unfinished sculptures, Berg to face the first wave of inquiries. Justice had begun, not with fanfare, not with speeches, but quietly, inevitably. Elena would face trial in Stockholm. Evidence, the letters, the knife, the psychological tells, would speak louder than any rehearsed denial. Poirot rose at last. He walked to the tall window and looked out across the snowfields. The ice hotel glowed softly in morning light, beautiful, fragile, eternal in its annual rebirth. Yet, beneath the surface, truth had taken its place. No applause for this performance, only justice. Chapter 9. After the show, the Ice Hotel began its slow return to ordinary rhythm in the pale light of late morning. The grand ice hall, once the stage of revelation, was already being prepared for transformation. Staff in heavy wool coats moved quietly with long chisels and soft brushes, gently smoothing the frost where Elena had knelt, erasing the dark stain on the ice bed with careful applications of fresh water that would freeze overnight into pristine white. The frozen swans overhead still arched gracefully, but their glow felt muted now, less magical, more fragile. The dome caught the low Arctic sun and scattered it in soft prisms across the walls, reminding everyone that this theater, like all others, was temporary. In the warm annex drawing room, Hercule Poirot sat alone for a time. Strong continental coffee steamed in a porcelain cup before him. 3 sugar cubes rested symmetrically on the saucer. He stirred slowly, watching the liquid swirl. The scent of furniture wax mingled with the faint perfume of hothouse lilies someone had placed on the mantel, red blooms defiant against the winter outside. The grandfather clock chimed the quarter hour. Its musical notes drifted through the velvet curtained space like a gentle reminder that time continued, even after tragedy. Ingrid Voss appeared first. She carried a small valise, fur stole draped over one arm. Her face looked younger in daylight, less shadowed by grief, more determined. She paused at the doorway, then crossed to Poirot's table. I am leaving for Stockholm this afternoon, she said quietly. There is a small gallery that once promised Victor space. They have offered it to me instead. I will exhibit my own work now, not his shadow. Poirot inclined his head. Truth has freed you, mademoiselle. Use it. Sculpt with your own hands, not borrowed dreams. Ingrid's lips curved in a small, genuine smile, the first without tears. She touched his hand briefly, then left. Her footsteps faded down the corridor toward the sleigh waiting outside. Marcus Hale entered next. Tweed jacket buttoned now, but still rumpled. He carried a briefcase, and a telephone receiver had just been replaced in the next room after a long call to London. My solicitor advises full cooperation, he said without preamble. I will return the diverted funds. There will be charges, fraud, perhaps accessory after the fact. But it is over. No more hiding. Poirot regarded him steadily. Complicity is a heavy mask, monsieur. Removing it hurts. Yet beneath lies the possibility of a different role, one played honestly. Marcus exhaled, a long shaky breath. I never thought it would end like this. Few do, Poirot replied softly, but endings teach. Marcus nodded once, then walked out. The sleigh bells jingled again as he departed. Lars Ericsson did not come to say goodbye. Through the tall window, Poirot saw him crossing the snow toward the outdoor studio. No cigar today. He carried a single chisel, shoulders set. His sculptures, jagged, furious, would perhaps find a new form now that envy no longer directed every strike. He paused once, looked back at the hotel, then continued on. A man stripped of one role, searching for another. Ingvar Berg appeared last. The hotel owner moved with the careful step of someone carrying invisible weight. His crisp linen had been replaced by practical wool, face lined with fatigue. We will reopen in November, he said, almost to himself. A new theme, rebirth, perhaps. The press will come, they always do. But the guests, they will sense something different. Poirot made a small, expressive gesture with his hands. Every theater carries its scars, monsieur. The audience may not see them, but the actors remember. Let the lessons linger. Build honestly this time. Berg met his eyes for a long moment. Then he bowed slightly, formal, grateful, and left to speak with the staff. The drawing room fell quiet again. Outside, wind stirred fresh snow across the fields. Sleigh tracks crisscrossed the path to Kiruna Station. Inside, the fire crackled softly, sending warmth against the chill that still seeped through the windows. Coffee cooled, untouched. Roses drooped slightly in their vase. Poirot rose at last. He walked to the window and looked out across the snow. The ice hotel stood serene in morning light, elegant arches gleaming, frozen beauty untouched by the night's drama. Yet beneath the surface, everything had changed. Masks removed, roles redefined, futures uncertain but possible. Ingrid would sculpt her own path, free of borrowed promises. Marcus would face consequences, but perhaps find relief in truth. Lars might channel rage into creation instead of destruction. Ingvar would rebuild, wiser, more cautious. Elena would face justice in a Stockholm courtroom. Her performance ended forever. The theater had emptied. The stage lights dimmed. The velvet curtains closed on one tragedy, opening space for whatever came next. Yet the lessons remained, quiet, insistent, carried in every small gesture, every avoided glance, every moment when a mask had slipped and truth showed through. Humans would continue to perform, to hide, to lie for love or greed or fear. But truth, patient and inevitable, would always wait in the wings. The theater emptied. The lessons lingered. Chapter 10. Poirot reviews the performance. The train south from Kiruna glided smoothly through the endless white landscape. Its rhythm, a gentle counterpoint to the silence Poirot preferred after a case concluded. Late afternoon light slanted through the compartment window, pale gold now, winter weak but comforting. Hercule Poirot sat in his favorite corner seat back to the engine, a small table before him neatly arranged. A pot of tisane steamed gently. The faint herbal scent mingled with the clean smell of polished leather upholstery and crisp linen napkins folded beside a single porcelain cup. Outside, snowfields stretched unbroken. Inside, warmth wrapped him like an old friend. He had opened a small notebook earlier, but now it lay closed. The little gray cells required no further notes. The drama had played itself out. Only reflection remained. A folded newspaper from Stockholm rested on the seat beside him, delivered at the last stop. The headline was restrained. Prominent sculptor's widow charged in ice hotel murder. Below, a brief account. Elena Lindström in custody. Full confession given. Trial expected in spring. No sensational photographs. Swedish press maintained dignity even in tragedy. Poirot sipped his tisane, hot, fragrant, soothing. He touched his magnificent mustache thoughtfully, then smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. His green eyes gazed at the passing scenery without truly seeing it. The mind replayed the frozen stage instead. Why do people perform rather than reveal the truth? Society hands us scripts from birth. The devoted wife, the loyal friend, the ambitious protégé, the visionary host. We learn the lines early. Smile here, weep there, conceal this, exaggerate that. Masks become second nature because raw truth terrifies. Exposure risks judgment, loss, humiliation. Greed dresses as love, resentment as loyalty, fear as helpful cooperation. In the Ice Hotel, each actor wore their role with desperate precision. Elena's dry eyes at first discovery, calculated restraint. Marcus's steady hands on every glass, false calm. Ingrid's genuine tears, yet selective in their target. Lars's loud bravado, overcompensation for envy. Ingva's endless offers of assistance, deflection. Guilt always betrays the performer. The body cannot lie forever. Dry handkerchiefs when tears should flow. Too steady hands in moments of supposed shock. Avoided glances when a name is spoken. Over-rehearsed dialogue that arrives too polished. The soul rebels against sustained deception. Small gestures whisper what words deny. A clenched fist behind the back. A hurried breath when silence would serve better. In every case Poirot had solved, from the Orient Express snowbound to country houses in summer, the same pattern emerged. The actor exhausts himself, maintaining the facade. Truth waits patiently. Exhaustion opens the door. He recalled another confined stage, the Orient Express, years earlier. Passengers trapped by snow, each wearing a mask of innocence, while collective guilt performed outrage. They rehearsed alibis and whispers, practiced expressions of horror. Yet one by one the tells appeared, steady hands pouring coffee after shock, averted eyes at mention of the victim, 2 perfect tears from a woman who had never truly loved. There, too, psychology prevailed over physical clues. The little gray cells dissected performances until the curtain fell on justice. Here in Jukkasjärvi the pattern repeated, only colder, more crystalline. The ice itself preserving evidence long after warmth would have melted it away. The psychology of revelation never changes. Confrontation arrives. the spotlight narrows. The actor feels the weight of eyes, real or imagined, and the mask grows heavy. Maintaining lies requires constant energy. Truth flows naturally, effortlessly. When Poirot had circled Elena in the ice hall, speaking softly of delay and grief, of rehearsed tears, something inside her snapped. Not from evidence alone, but from the unbearable strain of performance. The body sighed in relief when confession came, shoulders convulsed, breath released, tears real at last. Revelation is mercy as much as justice. The soul craves to drop its burden. Truth triumphs over performance because deception is unnatural. Humans are built for connection, not eternal hiding. Conscience whispers. The heart races. The hands tremble. Society may demand masks, but the organism resists. In the end, truth emerges, slowly, inevitably, because no actor can play a false role forever without forgetting lines. One small slip, a dry eye, a steady hand, a rehearsed sob. Poirot watches for these signs. The careful observer sees what others miss, and you, mon ami, have become that observer through this telling. You noticed the tells. You questioned the too perfect roles. You watched the masks crack. The train slowed as it approached a small station. Snowflakes drifted past the window like quiet applause. Poirot set the empty cup aside. He arranged the sugar cubes one last time. 3 perfect pyramids. Then rose. The compartment felt smaller now, the journey nearing its end, until the next theater of crime opens its doors. Another country house, another luxury train, another frozen stage. Hercule Poirot will wait, watching, observing, directing the spotlight when the moment arrives. Because in the grand theater of human nature, every actor eventually forgets their lines, and truth always takes its bow. Until the next theater of crime, mes amis, Poirot will be watching.